Welcome back to another episode 46 of the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse, sponsored by Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors. That's us here in Kansas City. Our team is growing. I'm super stoked about this. So I'm gonna introduce some new team members here in 1 second. Here's our team. Katie Cobb. If you've done any type of transaction or interaction with Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors, you have definitely interacted with Katie. So shout out to Katie for always keeping us in line, scheduled, making sure everything's moving forward. So very much appreciate her. Nick Morales, Nathan Roberts, Chad Kagi, Derek Schatzer, Mitch Case, and our new team member, Joe Newsey, who brings a diverse and well-rounded background to Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors. He's got experience spanning public service, politics, residential and commercial real estate, and ownership of his own brokerage in central Kansas. Recently located and relocated here to Blue Springs, a submarket here in Kansas City. But his career has shaped a strong foundation in leadership, negotiations, and market strategy, allowing him to serve buyers and sellers and investors with clarity and confidence. He's known for his relationship-driven approach and entrepreneurial mindset. I'm super stoked for Joe, somebody who's got over 15 years of experience, to be joining our team. His depth of that experience makes him a valuable addition. And I'm so pumped about this, Simon. I know you and I have actually talked about, growth strategies of the brokerage, but man, when you find good people that are willing to put in the work and spend time learning the markets and being focused and intentional, it really does really impact your personalities and your ability to have more impact. So I'm excited for Joe to be joining here on the team. Today, we are joined by Simon. Simon, I'm probably going to butcher your last name, man, but Enwia. Did I get it right? Simon, you're on mute. Experience to be joining our team.
I am hearing a little bit of an echo in the background. I apologize if it's my system, but so yes, you got that right. Last name is Enwia.
Okay. Well, as I give your introduction, I'll let you go back on mute. Maybe we can figure out some of the technical things on your end, because I'm hearing that as well. So I know that the listeners are hearing that as well. So let's get that figured out if we can. Just everybody, give us a few minutes. But while I do that, while Simon does that, I'm going to focus on getting an introduction done, as well as just handling a little bit of background information, right? So Simon is a CCIM, and if you're in commercial real estate, you know how hard that designation is to get. But he's an SRS, and I'll let him talk about that here as well. He's the CEO and Managing Broker of SENW, a full-service AI-enabled multi-state brokerage. He's licensed in Illinois, in Wisconsin, in Florida, Arizona, and California. Holy cow. And he's led high-value transactions across industrial, retail, multifamily, and mixed-use assets. He has a national focus on data center development. That's our focus today. It's going to be talking about data center or DC development and powered land, a newer asset class in commercial real estate. But he's got a background spanning redevelopment, general contracting, and working with real estate investment trusts, including work in the digitization of REIT securities. Man, Simon's bringing a rare blend of real estate, infrastructure, and technology experience to the Market Pulse today. He's a respected industry leader. You'll see him hanging out with guys like Bob Knackel and all those big names in the industry. And he serves on multiple boards. He mentors through CCIM. And he's a frequent speaker and published contributor in the commercial real estate and technology space. So, Simon, so glad to have you here. I appreciate you being here with us today. And how are you doing? We get the technology figured out over there?
I'm doing good, and I did figure it out, right? How can I lead a PropTech based brokerage without figuring it out? So the thing is, don't have two windows open at the same time.
Yep.
And so I appreciate the intro. It's great to be here. Logan, me and you have talked about data center land deals before. So I'm happy to jump on, and I think that we're going to have a great time. And yeah, I've been lucky to have some really good friends and mentors and people to show me what to do in the business as I've come along. I've met some really great people, people with an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset, and so that's really helped me because let's be honest, I came into the business knowing almost nothing, right? And so my background, my educational background, is definitely not in real estate or finance or business. And so, I got into real estate because I had to, not because I wanted to, because there was no jobs, and so I kind of had to build my own ship in many ways. But before we get started, I wanted to show everybody my new sweater in the Christmas season. So if you are Home Alone fans,
I love that.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. Yeah. So yesterday, Simon, I posted about this today actually on my LinkedIn. I had Commercial Real Estate Daily's one of their versions of their sweaters, which had said, "I survived 11 interest rate hikes," and it was a green sweater. And I've got another one that I'm going to bring out here pretty soon that says, "All I want for Christmas is lower interest rates," and it's got a big face of Jerome Powell right on front. And so people are loving that over on LinkedIn, which reminds me, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're watching us live on LinkedIn or YouTube, we are going to be monitoring the chat. So go ahead and comment, ask your questions, right? We're going to get into a lot of things around data centers today. And I know that's a big interest for a lot of people listening in today. We've already got a ton of listeners here, Simon, live. So make sure, ask any questions around data center, Simon's background that you would like, and we will get to them throughout the show. But Simon, for people who don't know you yet, give us the quick version of your background, and then, very abridged, because, we could be here for 45 minutes talking about your background.
Yeah.
But we also want to talk about how you ended up working with and on data centers, man. That's a very specific niche. That's a hot button.
It is a very specific niche. So quick background, 2011 got into real estate investing because there was no jobs. So I would apply for 100 jobs. I get 2 interviews, and then this was a great recession at the time. And so I'd get 2 interviews, and basically they would give the job to somebody with a lot of experience and pay them an entry-level salary. I think some people are maybe feeling that today also, the way some of the job sectors are around the country. So what I had to do was essentially find my own job or make my own job. And so I was able to borrow money from some family members. My wife's family actually was a fiance at the time. And it was $50,000. We ended up buying a condo, living in it, and then we ended up flipping it. Did that for a while, and then in 2016 got pretty good at it, and then created a development company and a redevelopment company, and it had its own brokerage and GC arm. And so got into building those out and renovating those, and then building a portfolio. And then in 2017 and 2018, I was infatuated with this new technology, which was DLT or blockchain technology, and essentially started a REIT management and REIT technology company where we digitized REIT shares. We were really early at the time, and so the SEC didn't qualify digital securities for years after that. With the first one being STX or Blockstack many years later. But so we ended up shutting that down. But what that ended up doing for me was it gave me a perspective in real estate that I didn't have before, and that was the institutional side. And so learning about institutions, learning about REITs, inside out, and being one of the first in the world to come up with a digital security for REITs and private REITs. Well, it was, there was no one to tell me you're making a mistake because no one had done it before.
Sure.
So I got in front of a lot of great people, had some great mentors actually that came up out of that space. Some that at the time had done the biggest portfolio deals in the world. One was Equity Office. and he passed. But Richard Kincaid, he was a great guy that we would be able to talk to and have breakfast with once a month, and so that was a big help to me. And basically, although we ended up shutting down the company in 2018, and I got back to some of the roots of building on a portfolio, I learned a lot and met a lot of great people. And so then when COVID hit in 2020, I ended up getting licensed in 3 states in 10 days. And it wasn't because I was doing anything fancy. It was just because it was a global, it was a global shutdown, and people were not submitting real estate applications at the time. And so I would submit an application to a state, and instead of it taking a month or 2 months to get processed, it was getting done in a day or sometimes the same day. And I remember driving out to Wisconsin from Chicago on a Wednesday at 9 o'clock to take the exam. And which would normally be a heavy traffic route, and I was the only car on the freeway on both sides. And it was like from a zombie apocalypse movie.
Yeah, apocalypse for sure. Yeah,
that's burned in my mind. And so just to go through that, and then I signed up with SVN, a wonderful company, worked with a lot of great people. And I was there for almost 3 years, and then finally spun off my own brokerage, SENW, which I've grown to be a multi-state brokerage. We use a lot of technology on the back end, especially. And why did I get into data center development sites? Well, this is specifically why. So about a year and a half ago, I started my CCIM journey. And around the same time, a little bit earlier, I was able to join the NACL affiliate program. And one thing I learned from Bob NACL, one of the GOATs, a great friend of mine, a great person all around, was the specialization is key. And so there you go. Wonderful book. So specialization is key. And just from my experience, what it came to be was my love for technology and my love for real estate was combined in essentially data centers, because I understand them. I was the guy building, crypto miners with video cards years ago, right? I was the one looking at different technologies and how they're going to affect, especially in prop tech, how they're going to affect real estate. And so it was a natural kind of transition for me to get into this specialty. It's obviously not done by many people. The barrier of entry is really high. The barrier of knowledge is really high. The players in the industry are mainly Fortune companies, as well as large developers. And so, between my understanding of institutions, between my understanding of technology, and then learning the process over the past year and a half, a few months ago, I was actually sitting at a bar in Chicago after the C5 conference with Bob and Rod Santomassimo and Vince Santomassimo, and we were talking, and we were talking about specialization. And they said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm a generalist and I hate it. And so I said, I'm going to specialize in this. And so that was one of the turning points to go from, hey, I have these data center development sites that I'm selling, and now I'm going to say no more to other listings. Now, I'm not going to leave my clients high and dry. And so as I'm building SENW and adding more great people to the team, I am able to, hand off those listings and give them to the right people, that can do the right job. So
absolutely.
That's how I ended up. That's the short story, and that's how I ended up specializing in DC dev sites.
Yeah, well, with the intersection of real estate, power, and your technology background, and currently, this is our first listener question that I'm going to get to in a second. The market timing of this, which could be, very unique right now, which I'm going to have you speak to, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, there's explosive demand from the cloud, from AI, from hyperscalers, from, streaming and enterprise IT. And so, I think that your experience with the blockchain and digitization of real estate and technology companies is a natural progression into that specific space. Our first listener question, though, is all around, if you're in the industry right now as a commercial real estate broker and a practitioner, an agent, is it a good time to start trying to specialize in data centers, right? I mean, where are we at? Is this the beginning? Are we in the middle? I mean,
so where are we at? I mean, look, they've been around for decades, right? One of the people that we talked to together, if you remember the client that we had a conversation with, he's former Google, right? And he was one of the first that built the data center over in Dublin, across the pond. So all those fiber cables that run through, they start over there in Ireland, and they basically go out through Europe. So they've been around for a long time. If anybody remembers the DVRs, right? So if you have Comcast or Xfinity or Cox or any kind of, or Century, you remember those DVRs. And so those are basically data centers. I mean, they're the early, and they're still used, but those are basically data centers that would push the audio and video right into your home. So where are we in that cycle? I would say if you compare this to the iPhone, we're on the iPhone 3GS, right?
Okay.
Or the 3G. We're on the iPhone 17 now. So we have a long way to go. I will say this, unlike Apple, which gets a new phone every year, the AI space, which is pushing the data center developments, is reinventing itself basically every 2 months, right? So you're seeing huge scaling on the AI side every 2 months. If you can think about what you've done using AI today versus what you did with AI a year ago versus what you did with it 2 years ago, it's a big, big difference. To answer the question, yes, it's a good time. Vacancy for data centers is about 1.3% nationally. So if you think about that, there's a whole load of demand, and it's not stopping anytime soon. And we are in a race against other, global superpowers to have the best AI as well as the best infrastructure to support that. And so I think we're pretty early. And don't think that there's only one avenue for this, right? So, just like any other real estate vertical, you have sales of sites. You have purchases of sites.
Right.
You have triple net leases, multi-tenant, single tenant that need to be sold. You have leases themselves, tenant rep, buyer, tenant rep or landlord rep. And so there's a whole, there's a lot of things that you can do in the data center specific areas of the business. So I definitely recommend going into it if it's going to be a specialty. I wouldn't dabble, because dabbling in this is very dangerous. It could cost you and your client a lot of time and money, and put them in a bad position. So I would specialize and not dabble.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, at the most basic level, right? How would you explain what a data center actually is to someone who's never stepped inside one, right? Like, what are we talking about here?
So, yeah, good question. Okay, so, and I think this is really important for, and I put this as number 2 on my list of top 10 items that's needed for a data center. And number 2 is community. And so it really means that you have to understand what a data center is, right? Am I going to be living near one and get a ton of radiation and grow 3 eyeballs, right? What is a data center? Essentially, they're computing racks that go into industrial style buildings or industrial buildings that are cooled properly, that have good ventilation, that are secure, that have a lot of power because there's a lot of power requirements, and that use a decent amount of water, and that have also wastewater treatment, whether that's through the municipality or their own sites, or a combination of both. Now, before I get into the nitty gritty of some of the water, wastewater, air-cooled or hybrid modes, which are probably better suited for an engineer anyway. But so what is data center? It's basically a big industrial building that has a lot of computers that if you do something on your phone, it's what's powering that device.
Got it. Yeah, we got another listener question in. They're hearing all this news about GPUs and all these GPUs. Can you explain? Is that what's going inside of these units, and what the heck is a GPU?
Yeah. So a GPU is basically a graphics card, right? And so a graphics card specifically is going to help compute those functions. So we used to use a lot of CPUs, if you remember, and we still do. But what happened was, as the functions are getting more complex, they realize that GPUs are better equipped to do those jobs.
Okay.
Whether it's in blockchain, crypto, for example, or whether it's using AI or graphics or things like that. So a GPU is essentially a giant graphics card in many ways, and that's powering the AI, the AI craze right now.
Absolutely. Well, keep the questions coming, listeners. We'll keep asking Simon as we go through it. Simon, I saw on your LinkedIn post, though, that you had, I think, 8 things that you wanted to cover in regards to what data centers need. I've got a few of them here, but I wanted to give you some time to kind of go through, what data centers actually need and what goes into this. Because, I'll tell you, from my limited exposure working with data centers, I have now been exposed to things like KW lines or KV lines, and substations and all these different components of the different things that are needed for for data centers. But I know you've got a list that you wanted to cover, so let's dive into that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that list. I have a top 10 list, so I'm actually going to share number 8 with everyone today for the first time. If you don't mind, we'll do my actual video series number 8 right here. So number 1 obviously is power, 2 is community, right? 3 is water, 4 is wastewater, 5 is time, and so time changes in the order depending on the demand, right? Number 6 is fiber, number 7 is redundancy, and then let's talk about number 8. So I'm going to do my video land series live right here with everybody. So number 8 is land, and I'm happy it's land because Logan, me and you were looking at one of the land sites that you have, right? And so I'm happy that it worked out that way. So what about land makes it the number 8 reason to for a data center site? Well, right now you need, and this is people can write this down, but this will change. Right now, for a lot of hyperscalers, you're looking at basically a 3 megawatt per acre power to land size, and that's for the build out, right? But then what does the land need, right? So then it has to have it has to be flat. If it has flood zones or floodplains, that can hinder time. And so we talked about that a little bit, Logan, about one of your sites, with floodplains. And so that can, with FEMA having to get involved, that could hinder the time. And then you need enough land that's flat and buildable to actually be able to scale these data center sites. So if you have, for example, 500 acres, right, you could potentially get 1,500 megawatts to 500 acres, right? Now, obviously, they're going to start small and build out, but that's a good use. Now, it's not to say you can't do a data center with a high megawatt capacity in an urban center. You can absolutely, if the power is there and you go vertical, you could put a data center in a smaller piece of land. However, from what I know from the mechanics of it, it's better to have a large acreage to build these out versus going vertical. And that's because of cooling It's also because of the floor plate, how much weight they can handle with the racks being so heavy. It's about getting to the systems. But, there's definitely a good use for urban style data centers too, for edge centers and things like that. But for the hyperscalers, they're looking usually for right now 1,000 acres plus and a gigawatt plus.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, there's so many different types of data centers, like you mentioned, the big hyperscalers. You've got co-location, multi-tenant, enterprise. I mean, and then the edge and micro data centers. That's what I kind of wanted to, double click on, right? Was because yes, we hear about these big, sexy, land deals, right? Leesburg, Virginia just sold some land for $6 million an acre, right? 97 acres. But what caught my eye even more than doing ground up is this strategy here, which is conversions, right? I was tracking that 321 LaSalle in Chicago, right? It's an office building, 355,000 square feet. They went and secured 33 megawatts of power. They flipped it from $12 million, I think, to $42 million. And my figures may be off a little bit there, but they're pretty close. All because, and this was a 355,000 square foot office building that had the power now. And so now you're going to be walking on LaSalle in Chicago, and there's going to be a headquarters for somebody in an office. And then there's going to be a bunch of GPUs in an office building for a conversion to a data center. Is this the cure for the high-rise office buildings that we've been looking for, Simon? Like, this conversion stuff has got my interest level peaked even more than doing these long ground up, developments where you got to get power and all these things. This is so interesting to me.
Yeah, so it's a good point. So everyone talks about resi to office. I think office to resi. I think it's office to whatever makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So the dollars the market and the dollars will tell you what it needs to be. So I had somebody come up to me recently, about 2 weeks ago, and they were like, "Hey, I have a client. They're really hurting on vacancy in their office building, and they think they have a lot of power because of what's happening in their basement and their sub basement." I said, "Listen, I haven't seen the site. I don't have the address, but I can tell you this: if it has power, it's going to be worth a lot more as an edge data center site than it is an office building, vacant or not."
Yeah.
So, and that's true, right? So if it does have the power, usually in urban centers, you have good wastewater solutions. You have a lot of power that's not tapped, potentially, and that's because you have a big grid, and office doesn't use what industrial uses, and so sometimes you have a lot of trapped power, untapped power that you can tie in and get into that site. Now, again, they're not going to be hyperscalers, right? But they're going to be edge centers. They're going to be the ones that need to have, that need to be in urban centers. So right. I think it's definitely a good use if it makes sense, as long as you can get the racks in. And obviously, the engineers will look at the weight of those versus the floor plate and what it can handle. So, but hey, the market will decide. As long as you know what can go there and you do the research, and it turns out to be something good, then yeah, definitely the market will decide. And why not? If you have empty office buildings, I hate tearing things down. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's I love reusing things. I love old buildings, and so I'm all for adaptive reuse for office buildings that'll never be used, especially class B or class C buildings that may never get full occupancy again.
Yeah, well, the conversion side of things is very interesting to me because you've already got the building. It could have had a lot of telecom in the building, right? So you've got your fiber, you've got some power, right? You've got some sort of water to the building already. And so that speed to market could be faster for some of these conversions. I think the key is both paths, ground up and conversions, they live and they die by power, fiber, and execution. And we've got another listener question in here. We've got some interested parties here, Simon, today. They're saying, okay, well, if we're talking about conversions, like what's the first thing that they need to go evaluate? Well, it's probably power, right? Like that's the answer. So how the heck do you target specific properties or even find out the power allocation to a building like this, right? I mean, that's the question that I think is being asked here.
So always go through the list. The list works for, and so I've shared number 8 with you. I'm going to share number 9 right here on LinkedIn and number 10 on LinkedIn. But so go through the list. Power, community. So let's talk about community real quick. Because it's an office building, right? So in urban centers, it could be zoned as mixed use. It could be zoned as resi. It could be zoned as office. Legal non-conforming as office, depending on the zoning changes. And some urban centers kind of allow you for a host of different uses.
Yeah.
However, most of them don't allow for industrial uses in urban centers, right? Because they don't want manufacturing to come into downtown Chicago or downtown Los Angeles because of, the things that go with it, right? Fumes and this and that and noise. And so data centers are typically zoned as industrial or heavy industrial. They're codified that way in many municipalities, and that changes. But they're basically that. So at this point now, you got to do a zoning change, right? And so then you got to let everybody know around you in that urban center. And now that sphere around that urban center is there's a lot of people, okay? And so you have to get that community on board. So definitely number 2, community is really important. Water, wastewater, time to market, like you said, fiber, and then redundancies for power and for fiber are really important. And so let's go back to your question. What was your specific question again on that?
People may be sitting here listening. They're saying, "Hey, I own a 12-story office and it's in an urban center, and I've got power. How the heck do I figure out how much power I have allocated to my building, and if that can be increased?" That's the question.
Okay, so number 1 again, so we go back to power. All right, that's number 1 on the list. So then, how much power do you have to your site? You can ask your utility provider for that. Then you're going to say, well, I want to do a power study. Okay, I want to do a power study. Well, a power study involves, electrical engineers, and it's usually done by the utility company. Sometimes they'll hire a third party to do it for them. And those can range. In some municipalities, or some areas, not municipality, but some areas for utility, they'll ask you for a $2 million deposit.
Oh, wow.
Some will ask for a $1 million fee. Some will ask for $12,000, $14,000. So it really depends on your utility, and it's up, it's really up to them. Another method to track that is just to have a conversation with a business development person at the utility company without the study and say, excuse me, I want to do this at this site. I think there's power because of XYZ. Can you tell me how much power I can get today or in the next 12 months or the next 24 to 36 months? Now, keep in mind, with 1.3% vacancy in data centers and all the money in the world going into the space, a lot of people are asking those questions. Okay, right. So be very patient. Another way to do it is to use a software. So we are looking at some softwares right now that gives us, it's the same kind of software that power companies use and solar farms use, as well as power plant manufacturers or developers use. And so what that is it tells us, again, this is not 100%, but it tells us what the available power is around the area, in the buses, in the substations, and what the limiting factor is, and how much it would cost to upgrade the substation to get the power to the site. Now, again, this is third-party data that has to be verified by a power study, but it gives us at least an idea of what that takes. Now,
I was just going to say, it sounds like there's a tech opportunity, just like on Reonomy and things like that. to be able to say, hey, this building could be a good conversion, right? If you're a broker sitting here listening, it's like we just uncovered, I think, Simon, one of the biggest parts of this industry right now, which is information asymmetry. And there's very few components of commercial real estate where people only, have all the information, right, from an asymmetrical standpoint. And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, holy cow, if we had access to that software, or some software company was able to upload, this building may have power because of this, that seems like a big opportunity, man.
So there's already people that do it. There's some great companies that do it. If you thought the commercial real estate software platforms that you're using now were expensive, think again. I mean, this is, and so remember we talked about the high barrier of entry into the field? It's very, very expensive to get into. Now, in the past, I have a SWAT team that I've developed, and a SWAT team came from an idea that Bob Knackel had that he uses. And so I got all the best people that do different jobs in data centers and data center developments. And so I've used that SWAT team to kind of help me facilitate and figure out what sites are good to use, or sites are good. And they use me for the real estate portion of the SWAT team, right? And so how will you know? Well, if you don't use these softwares, which are, again, a third party, they're not going to be exactly what you're looking at. You have to talk to a utility company, or do a power study, or talk to a specialist broker like myself that deals in data center development sites, and we can figure out what kind of power your site has. And then beyond that, there's no insider trading in real estate. How do we get a big banner that says no insider trading in real estate? Okay, this is what I mean by that. If so the software and the utility companies, they are only figuring out what's available around their area in the system, okay? But if you know a solar farm is coming next door, or if you know that a power plant is being started back up, right? There's no insider trading in real estate. So if you know a power plant is being started back up, let's say it's an old nuclear plant, an old coal plant, or the life is being extended, and there's a huge swath of farmland right next door, that on the software and at the utility company may seem like this is not going to happen. We don't have the available power here on paper on this the most recent study, but it's coming. Hey, if it meets the list and you're able to buy that land, that's a good. Or if you own that land, that's a good piece of land to have in the coming years because of what's happening, right? And so I think people have to be smart, just like anything. But if you know what you're doing, it's a great industry to be in. But there's a lot of components to it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I hope that was a long way to answer the question. How do I know if I have power or not?
Yeah. So the way that I think about this is I love that the riches are in the niches, and the blue ocean strategy has shown us all and taught us all that when there is a high barrier of entry, there's lower competition, there's an opportunity there to be exploited and to be a specialist and create true value, right? There's a reason I don't really focus on doing multifamily brokerage in Kansas City, because I have defined my lucrative niche. I have gone through and I've looked at the last 2 to 5 years worth of sales data. I know that there is a lot of commercial real estate brokers specializing in that specific space. So there's a reason that I kind of play outside of that, right? Give me the weird, the hard, the challenging. Like, let me go find that needle in the haystack. I like to compete. I like to find those opportunities. And what the last 10 minutes just showed me, man, my wheels just spinning, is that this right here is that opportunity, because most people just checked out. They said, yep, too expensive, too hard, can't figure it out. And now I'm sitting here messaging Katie like, we have got to figure that out. Like, that is a huge opportunity, right? So anyways, I just wanted to say that. If you didn't catch that, if go back and rewind the last 10 minutes, it absolutely answered the question, and it really helped me understand what was going on, man. So very appreciated that, very much so. So let's talk about how these deals work, right? Like, you're in this, you're doing these deals. I mean, I've got to understand for the audience here today, like, who the ideal investor or owner is for a data center deal. You know, who should be not chasing this asset class, because there's very few times when I say, hey, we're working on a few, data center sites in the Kansas City area that nobody, like those investors, they don't typically say, oh, well, I don't want to, operate in that space. They're like, hey, would you tell me more about that? So it definitely piques people's interest, right? But it can't be for everybody. I would like to hear it from you in regards to who's this actual asset class ideal for?
Yeah, so good question. So there's a lot of money chasing few deals, okay? And because of that, there's a lot of speculation. And so if you're a landowner, I would say be wary of the speculators, okay? And the reason is because your chance of closing is a lot less. So a speculator may say, I'm going to pick up the land, just like in another deals, right? They'll pick up the land, they'll entitle the land, and they'll sell it to the developer, okay? And that's great. But sometimes they don't understand the community component. So they're like, oh, I'm going to just pick up this land. I'm going to, put it under contract. I'll do an 18-month due diligence, and it'll give me enough time to rezone, get the entitlements, and then flip it over to a developer. Well, the problem is they don't have the full understanding of the end goal, and so they don't understand the community aspect of it a lot of times, and so they'll get shut down. So they'll get denied, and the community will say, nope, we don't want this site for a data center because they didn't do the upfront, due diligence to get it done, or the upfront work to get it done. Another aspect is all the big companies, the big tech companies are going into the space. And so they have a lot of funds. They're very well capitalized. As we all know, they're $3 trillion companies in many regards. And so they're going in and they're competing against everybody else for power. And so I think that's an infrastructure problem. We have to basically improve our power infrastructure in the country. And so they're actually depending on a lot of behind the meter power or power that's not from the grid.
Okay.
And I'll get to that too. But so how do deals work? I would say be careful if you're a landowner for speculators, especially speculators that don't know what they're doing. But who are the players? They're the big companies. They're also well-capitalized investors that have a good team, that know what they're doing, that will put a site under contract and have a due diligence period of maybe, 3 to 6 months, depending on what ownership has already done up front, right? So, if you're a seller, work with someone that's experienced, get your power story right, have your power study done, and they're taking longer and longer, and then have the rest of the story, right? Which is, we talked about water, wastewater, which ties into community, time, fiber, and then redundancies. So have the story for all that ready to go. And you're going to be working with, depending on the size of your deal, you'll be working with people that will investors that will pick these up and then build them out and sublet them. Now they're not really built. They're not really built spec. They're actually built for each user because the user requirements are different. And so that's another thing too, that the money's there even for financing these deals, but they need the tenants. And so that can take a little bit of time, but most of the time, well-capitalized buyers will pick these up knowing that they'll get tenants eventually, whereas speculators may not. And right now, I would say 2/3 of the buyers out there, or potential buyers out there, are speculators. So again, work with a good team, And then if they are coming in as speculators, that's fine too. But talk to your agent and see if perhaps a very high earnest money deposit is required, or if it's a short-term due diligence period. So
okay, yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. Well, right before we get to my favorite section, which is quick takes with Simon, I'd like to talk about the Midwest, right? And you're not only licensed in the Midwest, you're licensed down in Florida and in Arizona and in Wisconsin as well. But from a Midwestern standpoint, from a national perspective, are you seeing folks or these end users really targeting specific geographic locations? And if so, is the Midwest one of those that they're focusing on?
So good question. Okay. I work with some of the biggest names, thankfully, and that's nice. And I work with other investors too. But some of the bigger names are actually not looking at the Midwest. They have that covered. I will say that Chicagoland area, Illinois, has some of the highest amount of data centers around the country. However, again, back to my list, right? Number 2 is community. In community, it's what are the taxes like? What are the property taxes like? What are the use taxes like? What are the incentives to build? And so it's not just about entitlements or zoning. And so in that area, Illinois, for example, has fallen off. They're not as, I would say, attractive in some of those community, aspects to build a data center in Illinois. But Wisconsin is very attractive. Indiana now is seeing a lot of data center activity. And that's because of, the utility companies are a little bit more friendly. They have more power to give out. There are large gas pipelines that run through, some of those states. And, there's plenty of land. There's good community involvement and backing from the governments, different level of governments. And so I think Midwest is still a very strong area to build data centers. We still have a lot of people that live in the Midwest, although an AI hyperscaler, for example, an AI data center doesn't need to be next to a large urban center. It can be as long as it has, the checklist of items, it can be in an open area. So.
Got it. Makes sense. We've seen, Meta pull some serious strings here in Kansas City in regards to, being up by the airport and things like that. I mean, massive incentives on some really big sites here in Kansas City. I don't think that is a coincidence when we have North Point, Hunt Midwest, Van Trust, some of the largest industrial developers that own the land in the right area, and they know how to build that and get the power to it. So I think there is a reason because of that. We have some of the bigger developers in the Midwest here in Kansas City. But I'm just curious because, for example, Missouri and Kansas, they are highly incentivizing. So go back to your list on the community side of things, right? They're highly incentivizing from the state levels and then even from the local levels with the port authorities to attract these data centers into our markets, right? And obviously, they're met with a lot of pushback, right? It's like, hey, you're doing $1 billion deal and you got 200 people that's going to create jobs for. Now, we don't have time to get into that today. We might have to do a follow-up episode in regards to what's the actual impact, right? The environmental impact, the economic development impact, all of those components of data centers. So round 2 will have to come in January, February with Simon on that front. And we've got like 6 other questions that we're going to get to. But I just wanted to kind of point out the fact that at least Kansas City, St. Louis, and specific parts of Kansas are attracting some pretty sizable, groups right now in regards. Now, how much they actually need here in the Midwest, that's where I'm finding out that, hey, we're tapped out. We got our projects. We're good to go. And they're moving to different locations. So very unique, right? But again, there's so many different ways to get involved with data centers. There's so many different ways that these deals are structured. How you can operate within this space takes a lot of education. So I want to get to the quick takes. And this actually is not on this list. But Simon, if somebody was interested in learning about data centers right now, what's the best resource from a brokerage and development standpoint? What's the best resource for people to start actually learning about this space?
So I would say there's a lot of good people that work at IBM, at Oracle. There's good people that work at Google and former Google. Look, go online, go to LinkedIn especially, type in data center and then type in, Google, IBM, whatever. You're going to see a lot of people talking about data centers. I follow a lot of them. I comment on a lot of their stuff. So, if you follow me, you're going to see a lot of it. And so, go through those and you're going to find the people. And basically, it's a critical industry, and look for people that are developing that. And so it's not going to be on the real estate side. I do talk a lot about data centers, but try to find people that are actually working in them to understand them better. So that's my advice to follow through on that. Now, as far as a book goes, I think you put up a great book earlier in real estate, Selling Buildings. It's a wonderful book. And so definitely look at that. Podcast, we just had a great podcast, Commercially Speaking, with Bo Barron and Timmy Barron, my former instructor at CCIM and a great friend. So definitely check out that podcast. We dived in for, I think the podcast is like 2 hours long, but we were there for 3 hours plus. And it was great fun. And we talked a lot about data centers. So definitely jump into that. What best advice for someone interested in getting into data centers? I think learn. Try to shadow someone, get a mentor that does, works in the space. Talk to people that work in the data center side, maybe not the real estate side because they won't know, about the real estate so much, but, talk to people in data centers to learn more about them. And then try to shadow or get a mentor that is specifically in that niche. Now, there's not many. I know of one other that does what I do as a specialty. And so there's definitely not many.
Yeah, I've got to meet a few off of LinkedIn. One of them being Walt Batonsky. I don't know if you know Walt in the industry, but we had a good little discussion about some data center stuff as well. But again, that's where I'm learning is LinkedIn, right? Trying to learn, trying to interview people around the space and see what they're doing on a regular basis to continue to educate themselves. So last question on the quick takes, Simon, finish this sentence. I see data centers going blank in the next 10 years. What's this look like?
I see data centers going bigger in the next 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And let me tell you why. The reason is because I stayed up last night till 1:30 in the morning. And what was I doing? So I run a company. I have 2 full stack developers that work at SENW, right? Not many small brokerages have full stack developers. Maybe some don't have any at all. And even with 2 full stack developers, and these are really talented people, way smarter than I am, right? I was up last night till 1:30 in the morning until my wife said, "What the heck are you doing?"
Right.
And what was I doing? I was vibe coding using 2 different advanced AI models. And I was building different features and modules for our backend that I was like, I'm thinking about this right now. And although I don't know how to code, I was doing it. And so, but with that, right, that's all AI compute power.
Yeah.
So, and then and then what it was building within hours, it's like, imagine, I want to put this in perspective, right, for people to realize how insane and how wonderful and a little scary this is at the same time. It's the comparative of walking up to an empty lot and waving your hand and saying, "Build me a house," going to get lunch and coming back, and that house is framed up, the outside is done, and now you just have to go inside, paint, and put up some drywall, right? Or put up some drywall and paint. And so it's that. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's that easy, but it's getting to that point, and that's not gonna stop. And so yes, the graphics cards will get more efficient. Yes, they will use less power, per compute, but the compute requirements are going to keep scaling. And so, even though they may get smaller and more efficient, we're still going to need a lot more.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Simon, we're coming up on 55 minutes here. Point people in the right direction, man, where they want to follow you. They want to talk to you about data centers. Maybe they got a building that they want to do a conversion on. Maybe they own some land, right? Like, how do they get a hold of you?
So my email is easy. It's Simon, SIMON at SENW.io, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, Simon Enwia, and I post regularly on LinkedIn. I try to post once a day at least, and I'm doing my video series right now on powered land, and I'll talk about day number 9 and day number 10 shortly. So
is that Powered Land series? Is it on LinkedIn or somewhere?
On LinkedIn, it's only on LinkedIn. So I've done number 1 through 7. I just did number 8 with you, so we're going to post number 8, and then number 9 and 10 I'll be doing too. So
beautiful, fantastic. Well, Simon, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your experience, talking about one of the hottest, if not the hottest, spaces in commercial real estate, and just giving everyone enough information to see if they can go learn more about this. Definitely follow Simon on LinkedIn. That's how we got connected. That's how we were able to, have a meeting outside of this. And now he's a guest on the podcast here. So really appreciate you being here, Simon. And if you want to talk about Kansas City commercial real estate, just head on over to mwcreadvisors.com. My email is Logan at mwcreadvisors.com. You can find me on LinkedIn on a regular basis as well. This has been episode 46 of the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse. Got some big things coming for 2026. Very excited about that. So stay tuned, and we'll be here again, actually, this Friday. We've got a double up episode week this week. So we're going to end this year coming up this Friday. So super stoked about that. See you guys then. Simon, thanks for being here.
Logan, thank you so much for having me on the show. Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful New Year. And I appreciate you giving me the platform and giving me the time to discuss one of my favorite subjects.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. See you guys.
Thank you.